Hi dear students, let's continue now with some of the other properties of soil. And now we're going to discuss about the soil pH. Most of the soil, they have a pH value between 3.5 to 10. And it has been found that in a high rainfall areas, the natural pH will be ranged to about 5 to 7. And in drier areas, it will be about to 6.5 to 9. Now, which pH has been found to be good for the plant growth? It has been found that if a pH goes less than 5.5, that is when it becomes more acidic in nature, the plant growth will be inhibited. And basically speaking, different soils can be present, but for the plant growth, it's better that it doesn't go beyond 5.5. That is lower than 5.5. That it must not become more acidic. So based upon this, based upon the pH, we can classify the soils into 6.5 to 7.5 is considered to be a neutral range. Then 7.5 is considered to be as alkaline range. And then we have less than 6.5 to be acidic. And a pH less than 5.5 is mainly considered to be as acidic it's considered to be strongly acidic in nature. So this is what we told about the soil pH. We have three main classifications: neutral, alkaline and acidic soils, as well as strongly acidic soils are also being present. Now let's talk about the next parameter called the soil carbon. Soil carbon is of much significance because without a carbon source, nothing can grow on soil. Now, based upon the type of carbon which has been found in the soils can be of two types. They can be either organic or they can be inorganic in nature. The organic carbon, it mainly includes the decaying plant matter, the microbes, the soil organisms, and they mainly include starches, sugars, proteins, carbohydrates, lignans, waxes, resins, as well as organic acids. Whereas if you're going to look into the inorganic components, of course you know about the inorganic compounds like sand, clay and all that. In that there are various inorganic compounds. So but inorganic carbon, it mainly includes, like, it should be inorganic in nature, but it should also have a carbon compound. Now calcium carbonate is one such example of an inorganic carbon. And the soil organic matter, it plays an important role in the soil function. It provides energy to the soil microbes, serves as nutrient storage, and also supply nitrogen, phosphorus, as well as sulfur. And organic matter will help to retain the nutrients, maintain the soil structure, to hold water for the plant use, and also to prevent the acidification of the soil. You know, if the soil becomes more acidified, what would happen? The plant growth would be inhibited. So based upon this, the soil can be divided into mineral soil as well as organic soil. If it contains less than 20% of organic carbon, it is referred to as a mineral soil. And if it contains at least 20% of organic carbon, it is referred to as an organic soil. So most majority of the earth surface, we have the organic soil. And we can see that the soil organic matter can either be influenced by environmental conditions as well as the agricultural management practices. And it has been found that ploughing and other disturbances which will expose the organic matter to more oxygen would lead to more microbial degradation of the organic matter. Irrigation activities such as periodic wetting, drying, etc. They can also lead to the degradation of this organic matter. Now, what do you have to look? Why do we have to talk about all these organic matter? Organic matter degradation is the more important way by which the fertility of the soil is being improved. If the organic matter does not decay, the fertility of the soil will not be increased. Now, if you're going to look into the fractions of organic matter, you have different fractions, but something of much importance which we should know is that humic acid, humic acid as a substance, okay, which is produced and it is resistant to degradation. Okay, humic acid is something which is resistant to degradation. So you can find different fractions are there. And the microbial degradation of organic matter, it firstly, what happens, the soluble carbohydrates and the proteins are broken down by various heterotrophic microbes, and about half of the carbon is respired as carbon dioxide, and the remaining is rapidly incorporated into the new biomass. So first one, the soluble carbohydrates and proteins are used. And during the second stage, what happens? The complex carbohydrates, such as the plant structural polysaccharides like celluloses, are then degraded. And cellulose represents is the most abundant organic carbon on the earth, and various brown rot fungi as well as filamentous bacteria, including Coniophoro and Streptomyces, as well as non-filamentous bacteria such as Cytophaga and Bacillus, will reduce this cellulose by extracellular enzymes such as cellulases, and they have been broken down into 2 or 3 glucose units called the cellobiols as well as cellotrioses. And then the similar compounds are readily degraded and assimilated as glucose monomers. And then ultimately you also have one part which has not been degraded. That is the lignin. Lignin of the plant has not been degraded, and that is being further degraded. It is not degraded by the common ones. You need specialized bacteria as well as fungi. Most predominantly it's the fungi that affect the lignin. So, in the microbial degradation of organic matter, firstly, the soluble carbohydrates like glucose and all that, soluble carbohydrates as well as the soluble proteins are degraded. After that, what happens? The complex carbohydrates and structural polysaccharides like celluloses and all are being degraded. And after cellulose is degraded, further after that, you will also have what happens? Undegraded portions such as lignin would also be there. Now, coming to lignin, lignin is a structural component of the woody plants, and you can see that I told you mostly it is fungi like Basidiomycetes, white rot fungi, as well as actinomycetes and also streptomyces. They are capable of extracellular lignin degradation, and mainly they are being brought about by phenol oxidase enzymes needed for the aerobic lignin degradation. Now, if you're going to look into the soil, both microorganisms and plants have an important role to increase the fertility of the soil. The microbes, by its metabolic activity, will release lots of exudates into the soil. At the same time, the microbes will degrade the plants, and some of the microbes will also live on the plants. And the plants would also give some exudates into the microbes, which will influence the microbial growth. And when the plants get degraded, it will release various organic matter, and the plants will also take nutrients from the soil. So you can see that it's a two-way process between the microbes, plants as well as the soil. So, and ultimately, if you remove either of these components, it would result in the degradation of the soil, and the food chain would be interrupted as well as the growth will also be inhibited. So you have to note one thing: the microbes, plants both contribute towards the soil fertility, and for the growth of both microbes as well as plants, they have to depend upon the soil also. Now, what is about the soil fertility? Soil fertility, it mainly depends upon two main elements. If you go to divide them into or categorize them, it mainly includes the presence of macronutrients as well as micronutrients. What are the macronutrients? Macronutrients are those which are needed in large quantities. Like you have NPK. You remember when we describe a soil, we say to increase the fertility, we add fertilizers based and we measure the NP and K, that is nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium. These are the important things. In addition to that, you also have sulfur, calcium, magnesium and all. So macronutrients are those nutrients which are needed in large quantities. But at the same time, you need some nutrients in small quantities like copper, zinc, iron, manganese, boron, molybdenum and all. So when both the macronutrients and micronutrients are not being provided in the soil in a sufficient level, it will result in the decline or the depletion of the soil fertility. And adequate quantities of these two macronutrients as well as the micronutrients are essential for the maintenance of the soil fertility. So soil fertility depends upon various properties like the soil properties, pH, texture, and all that. And the soil biology, the organisms which are being present in the soil will influence the soil fertility. Now, the animals as well as the plant matter, whether it has been broken down into the nutrient forms that can be used by the plants in such a form, that is important. Then it depends upon the organic matter which has been present in the soil. It depends upon the water, because water in the soil pores carries the nutrients to the plant roots. And also fertilizers also play an important role. If you add fertilizer, of course the fertility increases, but now what type of fertilizer you need to add, it depends upon the type of farming what you do. Now let me talk about nitrogen. It's an important macronutrient which has been needed for the soil health, and it can be found that a carbon to nitrogen ratio of about maximum of about 30, that is if decomposition is thought to be maximal at a carbon to nitrogen ratio of 30, that is 30 times more carbon should be present than nitrogen, and a ratio less than 30 can result in the loss of soluble nitrogen from the system. And if the ratio becomes above 30, then the microbial community, that would cause the microbial community to be nitrogen limited. That is, they will be having, in fact, many soils will be, that is, they will be lacking the nitrogen which is being present. So that's why in certain cases we need to add nitrogen fertilizers. And another macronutrient is phosphorus, which we have to consider. It is also something which is needed for the soil fertility, and the binding of this anionic fertilizer component to the soil depends upon the cation exchange capacity and the soil pH. You know, the interactions, that is the based upon the interactions between the fertilizers and the soil pH, phosphorus is available. As the soil's phosphorus absorption capacity is reached, the excess together with phosphorus released to the soil erosion moves to lakes, streams, and estuaries, where it can stimulate the growth of fresh water. You might have heard about eutrophication in the previous semester. That is, we had mentioned when the phosphorus uptake has been found to be not much. That is, the phosphorus uptake is already been saturated. That is, more amount of phosphorus added to the soil. So there is a limit up to which the plant can absorb phosphorus. Beyond that, if you add phosphorus into the soil, what happens? Those phosphoruses will be drained out through the water streams or through the water bodies, and finally reach into water bodies which are adjoining by soil erosion and all that. And that could lead to rapid algal growth in the water bodies and finally resulting into eutrophication. Hope so the soil fertility and the elements which contribute to the soil fertility is clear to you. We will be talking about the soil fertility tests in the next sessions. Thank you for now.